Let's transition and let's go to the AFC West preview and my expectations for the AFC West. Obviously, last year, the Kansas City Chiefs won the AFC West with a 14-3 record. The Chargers finished 10-7. The Raiders were 6-11, and the Denver Broncos were a disappointing 5-12. And Vegas odds for the division this season, no surprise here. Chiefs are favorite to win the division, minus 160. Chargers come in second place with a plus 310. Broncos are plus 650, and the Raiders are a plus 2,000. Obviously, when you look at the AFC West, first off, let's say they play the NFC North and the AFC East, so that's gonna be challenging for the Chiefs and the Chargers and the Broncos and the Raiders, because you play in the AFC East, you got to play the Bills, the Jets, the Dolphins. That's going to be challenging. In the North, you got to play the Packers and the Lions and the Vikings. I'm going to talk about them later on in the show, but AFC West plays the NFC North and the AFC East this year. So, looking at the AFC West, obviously, the Kansas City Chiefs, led by Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, are the cream of the crop in the AFC West. They are the team to beat in the AFC West heading into the 2023 season. They have won 7 straight division titles. And so when you look at consecutive division titles, longest streak since the merger, the Patriots, they had 11 straight seasons where they won consecutive division titles. The Chiefs are going to be going for their 8th consecutive season, winning the division title this upcoming NFL season. And so I want to start off with Andy Reid. And I was looking at top coaches in NFL history, and I was comparing Andy Reid to some of the greatest NFL coaches of all time. And this year, Andy Reid's going to move up on the top 10 winningest coaches in NFL history list. Don Shula has 347 total wins. Bill Belichick has 329 total wins. George Halas has 324 total wins. Tom Landry has 270 total wins, and Andy Reid has 269. These wins are the regular season and the playoffs. So obviously, Andy Reid is going to surpass Tom Landry. Tom Landry got 270 total wins. Andy Reid has 269. But when you talk about Andy Reid, you look at what where is that in amongst the all-time greatest coaches? Most people believe that Bill Belichick is the greatest coach in NFL history. But when I started looking up some numbers and I digged up some statistics, I'm looking at where each coach is going, and I'm projecting these two coaches moving forward. You look at Bill Belichick. He has 31 playoff wins. Andy Reid has 22 playoff wins. Andy Reid is going to be coaching Patrick Mahomes over the next maybe 6 or 7 years if he wants to coach. Bill Belichick has Mac Jones as his quarterback. So I believe there's a possibility that Andy Reid could pass Bill Belichick in playoff wins. Let's go to playoff appearances, shall we? Bill Belichick has 19 playoff appearances. Andy Reid has 18 playoff appearances. And honestly, I don't expect the New England Patriots to make the playoffs, but I expect the Kansas City Chiefs to make the playoffs. So that means they will both have the same amount of playoff appearances. What about championship game appearances on their resume? Bill Belichick has 13 championship game appearances on his resume. Andy Reid has 10. I believe as time goes along, Andy Reid will surpass Bill Belichick in championship game appearances because he has Patrick Mahomes as his quarterback, and Bill Belichick has Mac Jones. So I know right now when you look at their again total wins, Super Bowl appearances, and Super Bowl wins, it's going to be hard for Andy Reid to pass Bill Belichick, but he can pass him in playoff wins, playoff appearances, and conference championship game appearances for sure. So I think Andy Reid, if he wins another Super Bowl this year, he starts to elevate in that top 3 head coach of all time conversation for sure. Because right now, most people believe it's Don Shula, Bill Belichick, Tom Landry. You got to start including Andy Reid in that conversation. Because this is another thing I want people to know. Look at this is Bill Belichick and Andy Reid. This is Andy Reid without Patrick Mahomes, and this is Bill Belichick without Tom Brady. Andy Reid had 19 seasons without Mahomes. Bill Belichick had 10 seasons without Brady. Andy Reid has a better record without Mahomes than Bill Belichick has without Tom Brady. Andy Reid has won 60% of his games even without Patrick Mahomes. Bill Belichick has only won 47% of his games without Tom Brady. Andy Reid has 5 championship game appearances without Patrick Mahomes. Bill Belichick has 0 championship game appearances without Tom Brady. Remember all those conference championship games Andy Reid was getting to with the Philadelphia Eagles with Donovan McNabb? I mean, he led the Philadelphia Eagles to multiple conference championship game appearances. Some of those years they just couldn't get over the hump. But Andy Reid is a top 5 coach of all time. And if he wins another Super Bowl, you got to include him in that same conversation with the Tom Landrys of the world and the Bill Belichicks of the world as well. But his quarterback is Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes won the NFL MVP last season. 41 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, 5,250 passing yards, completing 67% of his passes. He was sensational last year. And I thought last year in the playoffs, even after Patrick Mahomes injured his ankle, his ability to get the Chiefs to another Super Bowl and him to outduo Jalen Hurts was something that I feel like elevates his legacy. Remember, Patrick Mahomes was playing on a bum ankle last year in the playoffs, and he was able to get the Chiefs to the Super Bowl, and they were able to win the Super Bowl with a below-average receiving core. That receiving core last year for the Chiefs was below average. Patrick Mahomes didn't have Jamar Chase. He didn't have Stephon Diggs. He had players like Juju Smith-Schuster on his team. He had Marquez Valdes-Scantling, Sky Moore. These were some of the receivers that Patrick Mahomes was playing with last year in the postseason, and the man won an NFL Super Bowl MVP and put up 38 points in the Super Bowl on a bum ankle. He is the best quarterback in the NFL by far. By far. And I've been critical of Patrick Mahomes. I argue with my cousins and family and friends because they think that Patrick Mahomes is the greatest quarterback in NFL history, and I'm not ready to go there yet. But last year, to me, what he was able to do with this receiving core on a bum ankle elevated his legacy. It was one of those moments that we're going to remember later down the road, 15, 20 years from now, when we look at these rosters who competed in the Super Bowl, we're going to look at this Chiefs roster and say, he didn't have an elite receiver to distribute the football to. I know he has Travis Kelce. I'm talking about an elite receiver, like Joe Burrow has in Jamar Chase, like Josh Allen has in Stephon Diggs, like Herbert has in Keenan Allen. That's not what Patrick Mahomes had last year during that playoff run. So he had a sensational performance in last year's playoffs. But when you look at the receivers for the Chiefs, their approach this year is quantity over quality because they have a bunch of receivers on their team. Sky Moore, Marquez Valdes-Scantling. I like Kadarius Toney's talent. He had a great punt return last year in the Super Bowl. They got Rashee Rice, Richie James. So their approach is quantity over quality this year. They don't have an elite receiver who is going to completely take the top off of a defense and be the number one receiver. MVS has speed, but he's not a number one receiver yet. He's not. Now, obviously, they still got Travis Kelce, one of the greatest tight ends in the NFL. But for me, when it comes to the Chiefs, it's not about their offense because they got Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. It's about their defense. How will this defense look without all-pro defensive tackle Chris Jones? Because last year in the AFC Championship game, I'm going to tell you something right now. The Chiefs do not beat the Bengals in the AFC Championship game without Chris Jones. He was sensational last year in the AFC Championship game. He was great. And he's already threatening to hold out and not return until midway through the season. He's already said he may not play the first 8 games of the season. So how will this Chiefs defense perform under defensive coordinator Steve Spagnuolo without their all-pro D-tackle and Chris Jones? I don't believe in this Chiefs defense. I don't. They got Mike Deanna at end, Willie Gay, okay, in their secondary. They got Brian Cook, Justin Reed. This Chiefs defense is, out of all the elite teams in the NFL, the Chiefs probably have the worst defense when it comes to other elite teams. If you look at the top teams in the NFL, the Chiefs probably have the worst defense. They don't have a defense like the Eagles. They don't have a defense like the 49ers. They don't have a defense like the Cowboys or the Bengals. So I got my questions about the Chiefs and whether or not they're going to be able to perform well enough while they don't have Chris Jones. And they have the Lions to open the season, and I expect the Lions to run the football. They're going to try to punch the Chiefs in the mouth because they don't have Chris Jones. Now let's transition to the Chargers. They brought in new offensive coordinator Kellen Moore. They still got Staley as their head coach. I don't understand how the hell Staley still has a job after the lead that the Chargers gave up against the Jaguars in that playoff game. If I was the Chargers owner, Brandon Staley would not have been allowed back on the flight back to Los Angeles after that debacle in the second half. He wouldn't have been able to get back on that plane for me. He was pathetic in the second half against the Jacksonville Jaguars last year. And his staple was supposed to be defense. That's what he's known for and what his strength is. And defensively, the Chargers, in my eyes, have not lived up to expectations. I'm going to get to that defense here in a minute. Obviously, they are led by their young star quarterback in Justin Herbert. Last year, Justin Herbert had 25 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, 4,739 passing yards, completing 68% of his passes. He signed a new contract extension earlier in the offseason. And you look at Justin Herbert and what he's been able to do in his first 3 seasons in the NFL. 14,089 passing yards. That's ranked first in NFL history. He has 22 300-yard passing games. That's ranked first in NFL history. Remember, this is all in his first 3 seasons, his all-time ranks. He has 94 touchdown passes. That's ranked second in NFL history. But as great as Justin Herbert has been so far in his career, Justin Herbert has not gotten the job done in the postseason. And when he got to the playoffs last year, Justin Herbert couldn't outperform Trevor Lawrence in a game in which his team had a 27-point lead. 27-point lead, and Justin Herbert could not finish the deal and get the Chargers to the divisional round of the playoffs. And so that's why this year there are some people who believe that Trevor Lawrence, Jalen Hurts, there are some people who believe that Trevor Lawrence and Jalen Hurts are better than Justin Herbert is. I don't. I know Jalen Hurts had a tremendous season last year. He was an MVP candidate, but I'm taking Herbert over Hurts. I'm taking Herbert over Lawrence. But I understand why there are people out there who believe that Lawrence and Hurts are better than Herbert because we haven't seen Herbert perform well in the playoffs. He got to the playoffs last year, and it's one chance to get the Chargers to the divisional round of the playoffs. The man gives up a 27-point lead. 27-point lead. Now, obviously, Chargers, offensively, they have Keenan Allen. They got Mike Williams, who leads the receiving core. They still got Austin Eckler in the backfield. Okay? And I expect their offense to put up points. I really, really do. But one of the problems that I have with the Chargers is, too, their worst mistake was leaving San Diego because they don't have a real home field advantage. They don't have a real home field advantage. Opposing teams' fan bases, they outnumber the Chargers fans when the Chargers have games at home. And that's a problem. That is a problem for the LA Chargers. Now, defensively, they still got Khalil Mack. They still got Joey Bosa. They still got Darwin James in their secondary. They're going to get back J.C. Jackson, who I believe was injured majority of the season last year. So this defense has to be better. And again, Brandon Staley's strength and what he's known for is defense. Why have the Chargers been so bad on defense under Brandon Staley? It makes no sense to me. If you can't strengthen and make your expertise better, and his expertise is defense, then what value do you have to your football team? What value do you have? So those are my questions about the Chargers. Now let's go to the Denver Broncos. Obviously, they brought in new head coach Sean Payton, and we know Sean Payton is one of the more respected coaches in the NFL. But Sean Payton's job is going to be tough because he's going to have to revitalize Russell Wilson's career. Russell Wilson last year, this is his ranks in his 11 career seasons. His 4-11 record last year was ranked last in his career. His 61% completion percentage was ranked last in his career. His 16 touchdowns and 11 interceptions were ranked last year, and his passer rating of 84.4 was ranked last. This is in 11 career seasons as a starting quarterback. So Russell Wilson had one of his worst seasons of his career last year. He was pathetic. And so Sean Payton's number one job is going to be, can he revitalize Russell Wilson's career? That's what he's getting paid to do. Now, he had a lot of things that he had to say about Nathaniel Hackett, and I believe that Sean Payton, he put more pressure on himself and on Russell Wilson to perform this upcoming NFL season, because he pretty much came in and said that the reason why Russell Wilson struggled last year had nothing to do with him. It had nothing to do with Russ. It was all about Nathaniel Hackett. So we're going to find out if Sean Payton can revitalize Russell Wilson's career. But he is already going to be at a disadvantage because the Broncos, they lost some key skill position players already. They lost Tim Patrick for a second consecutive season, and they also lost Jalen Virgil, receivers who were going to be relied on to help Russell Wilson in the passing game. And they did sign P. Ryan in free agency from the Bengals. I like that pickup. I really, really do. I like P. Ryan in the backfield with Javonte Williams. And I look at their defense. I thought last year, defensively, the Denver Broncos were a top 10 defense in the NFL. They're led by defensive coordinator Vance Joseph. And they didn't lose games last year because of their defense. They lost games because of Russell Wilson. I love their defense. Up front, you got Frank Clark. You got DJ Jones. Okay. At linebacker, you got Alex Singleton. In the secondary, you still got Pat Surtain, Kareem Jackson. Okay. So I love the Broncos defense. And I think they're going to be a top 10 defense in the NFL this year. Again, it's going to be about Russell Wilson in that offense. Can they hold up their end of the bargain? That's what it's going to be about for the Denver Broncos. Now let's go to the Raiders. Obviously, last year, the Raiders finished 6-11, and they brought back Josh McDaniels as their head coach. And they did sign Jimmy Garoppolo in free agency, right? But I want to start off with Josh McDaniels. I don't believe Josh McDaniels can coach. I don't. I'm just going to come right out and say it. I don't believe Josh McDaniels can coach. I believe he's a great coordinator, but I don't think that Josh McDaniels can be a leader of men and coach in the National Football League. I don't. since he's been a head coach so far for his career, Josh McDaniels is 17-28. 17-28. So he's won 38% of his games. What evidence do we have that has shown us that Josh McDaniels can coach? He was a great coordinator for the New England Patriots with Tom Brady as his quarterback and Bill Belichick as his head coach. But Josh McDaniels has not proven himself enough to be a quality NFL head coach. So that's the number one reason why I don't believe the Raiders are going to have success. I don't believe in Josh McDaniels. Now, let's get to Jimmy Garoppolo. I don't believe Jimmy Garoppolo is an upgrade over Derek Carr. I do believe the reason why Josh McDaniels made this move is because he has a relationship with Jimmy Garoppolo, something that he didn't have with Derek Carr. But Derek Carr, to me, is a better quarterback than Jimmy Garoppolo is. Jimmy Garoppolo was carried because he played for the 49ers, and the 49ers, top to bottom, had a top 3 roster in the NFL. That's the reason why Jimmy Garoppolo won so many games. People talk about Jimmy Garoppolo and his winning percentage. Jimmy Garoppolo won those games because he was coached by Kyle Shanahan, and he had one of the greatest rosters in the NFL, period. That's why Jimmy G succeeded. Jimmy G's not a good quarterback to me. He's not. So I don't have much expectations for the Raiders. I love Devontae Adams, obviously. I still think Devontae Adams is a top receiver in the NFL. They still got Hunter Renfrow. They got Austin Hooper at tight end. Defensively, Patrick Graham is their defensive coordinator. And I like Max Crosby and Chandler Jones, but we haven't seen Tyree Wilson yet, their top 10 draft pick out of Texas Tech, dealing with the foot injury. So we haven't seen him yet. And I like Tyree Wilson a lot. And I like Max Crosby and Chandler Jones, but I don't really expect that defense to be better this year than they were last year. So I don't got high expectations for the Raiders. I got the Raiders finishing last in the AFC West. I got the Broncos finishing third. I got the Chargers finishing second. And obviously the Kansas City Chiefs will win the AFC West for 8th consecutive season.